It's time for the biggest story of the day. This is What Made the Cut with JJ and Alex on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Doug Smith brings you this portion of the program. Doug Smith, dealerships in American Fork, Spanish Fork, and in Linden. Nobody knows cars like Doug. Nobody knows the Utes like Steve Bartle, who's, of course, joining us right now from Waco. What's going on down in Waco, man? It's been a disaster for Baylor from a PR standpoint. Can you smell the defeat already in the air?
I just smell barbecue, fellas.
Oh.
I just smell barbecue. As soon as I landed, I plugged in Goldie's Barbecue, and I went straight from the airport right to the barbecue joint. I wasted no time, and that's what's on my brain.
Some degenerates, they get to Vegas, they immediately hit the casino.
Yes,
but guys in there, guys that are like married and have small kids, they take these work trips. They go, take me to the closest barbecue joint. Just get me there
guys
ASAP.
Being dudes,
Well, we're saying all that from Kenny J's, where they do Texas barbecue.
There
so
you go.
I get it.
Love Kenny
It's
J's.
all good. I know, man. This week has been not a good one for Baylor in terms of the off-the-field stuff, which, of course, I know they want to avoid all of that. But how much of it is penetrating kind of just like the whole vibe that's down there? I mean, Dave Aranda gets affected by it. Mack Rhodes has to step away from the playoff committee. He has to step away from the team as he's taking some personal leave. I can't imagine that all this is not going to be thought about among the fan base. It just happens to be a bad distraction when a really good Utah team is coming to town.
Yeah, it was interesting. As soon as I landed here in Dallas, I hopped on the shuttle to the rental car space, and there was a conversation about Mack Rhodes, being had by a couple people on the other side of the bus of me. And it was interesting in the sense that it's a hot topic, and it is a conversation being had everywhere. And I was watching the Dave Aranda press conference, and, obviously he's going to say all the things that you would expect a coach to say, that it's not going to, bother us. We're focused on us internally and all of those sort of things. And that's what you hope for if you're a Baylor fan. But, the first 5 or 6 questions in his press conference were about Mack Rhodes and the situation there. And given what transpired earlier this season with Mack Rhodes and their star tight end, Michael Trigg, it's certainly something that I think it's going to be on the minds of people in that program. How much of it is going to play a role tomorrow, I have no idea. I have no real sense for, the Baylor football program, where they're at mentally, how this is all impacting them. But just in my short time being here in Texas, it is clear that this is, a hot topic, and it's something that everybody is talking about. And I think there's certainly it's fascinating in the sense of what it means and what it's done to the Big 12, having Mack Rhodes on the playoff committee as the chairman there this season, to lose that spot, and what it means for everybody else in the Big 12. Obviously, with Utah, Mark Harlan stepping into that role, he will do the best job that he can, but still he's not going to be filling in as the chairman. So just the impact of what Rhodes apparently has been alleged of doing, and the allegations against him, and having to step away, it's just a tough look for Baylor and a tough situation to put that program in, as well as, the Big 12 conference.
Steve, what were the biggest areas of focus during the bye week for Coach Whittingham and this Utah team, and how, coming out of the bye, what's the sense that you get that they're going to keep this momentum and high level of play going into a road game, first one in about 2 months?
Yeah, the top 3 priorities for Utah during the bye week was rest, and rest. That's that's been the big thing. The key, I think, in a lot of ways to Utah, what's helped them this season compared to the recent season. So, I mean, you go back to the last couple of years, they're being hampered by the injury bug, and, they were having some pretty tough practices during their bye weeks, still, even while dealing with the injuries. And part of that is to get, some of the guys that need to fill in for the injured players, prepared and prepped for, what's to come for them. But this season has just been totally different. I think there's been a greater, rest has become the top priority for Utah this season, and it's really benefited this group. You look at the injury report that was released again last night. No players on the injury report, and obviously that players are dealing with bumps and bruises, but nothing significant to this point of the season is really significant for Utah. Given that they are in the final three games of the regular season, and in terms of their play, it seems like they're peaking at just the right time, and to have health on their side, this season as they start to hit their peak on the field, it's exactly the sort of combination you want, to make a run, late in the season. So that's been the big thing for Utah is just, rest and recovery and getting guys right for these for the final 3 games of the season.
These final 3 games, everybody knows what Utah has to do, which is just win them. But it's not just that. The committee wants to see style points, and this Utah team has that ability. They've been doing that. The style points are one of the best defenses in the country, one of the best offenses in the country. What is this offense capable of? I mean, we've seen it week in and week out, but I feel like we haven't even seen the best version of this offense yet. Steve, what do you anticipate the next 3 games to look like for this Utah team?
Yeah, I think just more of the same, because you look at the matchups and, each of these 3 teams, Baylor, Kansas State, and Kansas, they're in the bottom half of the conference in rush defense. And you look at Utah, at the top of the conference and one of the top in the country in terms of rushing offenses, and you really like how Utah matches up. But, yeah, I agree, Alex, that there is another gear that seems like this offense is capable of. With Devin Dampier this season, in the big games, he's just had injuries that have impacted his ability to perform at a truly high level, against Texas Tech and against BYU late in that fourth quarter. And that's not to take anything away from Texas Tech or BYU in those games, but it clearly, from Utah's perspective, just leaves, that wonder, right? That question of, is there another gear for this offense to get to? Can Dampier get to that next level? And I think I think you're right that's kind of where we're at. But, do they need to get to that gear against these final 3 teams? Not necessarily, but I think it is something that you would rather have answered at this point of the season, knowing what Dampier is truly capable of, when he's fully right and fully healthy. We haven't seen it yet, but, hopefully over the next 3 games, we see that at some point. And I think with these 3 games, style points are going to be important. And, Utah has shown that they can do that. And it doesn't need to be something where they go out of their way to put points on the board. You look at when these points came and how the scoring went. This was all done early on in the game, and so I just, again, it speaks to Utah, what they're doing on both sides of the ball. They've done a really tremendous job and are peaking at just the right time.
Steve, it's kind of crazy to look at both Utah and Baylor, how much maybe things have changed since the last meeting 14 months ago at Rice-Eccles Stadium. I think for Ute fans, they might look at this and think maybe, Baylor, it's going to be a defensive matchup. But a lot has changed since that last meeting in Salt Lake. What's maybe the battle that you look at that you're maybe most intrigued by, because it kind of looks like Utah's got the decisive advantage across the board here, but is there something you're looking at that kind of piques your interest that you're going to be monitoring quite a bit in this matchup?
Yeah, it's been really interesting diving into this matchup and looking at some of the numbers and some of the individual matchups. And obviously, I talked a lot about Utah's run game, and you have to feel really good about Utah's ability to establish the run. And I think coming into this game, the question is no longer can Utah establish the run. It's whether the opponent is going to be able to stop Utah's rushing attack. So, that's going to be the biggest question for Baylor. But for Utah, despite the advantages on paper, across the board, Baylor has a quarterback in Sawyer Robertson that is just really, really good. And when you have a quarterback of his caliber, he gives you a puncher's chance in each and every contest, regardless of how many advantages the opponent may have. Sawyer Robertson is just that good of a quarterback. He can make throws. He can make elite throws. He can make elite decisions and can really overcome a lot of deficiencies on that Baylor roster. For Baylor, I'm talking about this like Utah is just far and away the better team. They've been hampered by injuries. They've lost guys, and that's sort of what led to what this season has been for Baylor. So it's not to discredit them or anything like that. They've had injuries that they've had to deal with, and fortunately for Utah, they've been healthy. But again, getting back to Sawyer Robertson, just a tremendous talent at quarterback. They've got arguably the most productive, I shouldn't say arguably, I think he is the top tight end in terms of production this year in Michael Trigg at 40 receptions, 600 yards, 6 touchdowns. He's a dynamic pass catcher. That's going to be an interesting matchup for me, not so much in the sense of, who's going to match up with Michael Trigg, but in terms of Dallin Bentley and Utah's own tight end, and this being an opportunity for Dallin Bentley to potentially steal some of the spotlight from Michael Trigg in the John Mackey Award race. This is something that I'm really interested in, is whether Utah can get Dallin Bentley some big-time production. And looking at some of the numbers, I think Bentley matches up actually really well with this Baylor defense, whereas Utah has done a really good job of limiting production for tight ends. I think they've only given up 90 yards to tight ends this season. And so that's going to be a really fascinating matchup with the conversation around Sawyer Robertson. Is obviously Trigg has become Robertson's top target this season, and so limiting him and his ability to produce will be a big factor. But I also want to see Utah potentially get Dallin Bentley some big-time production in this game as well.
Steve, this is an interesting matchup, and Utah is favored heavily in this one, and it's hard to imagine that they would not be able to go in there and just absolutely push around this Baylor team that's got to be reeling right now. Might be in their own death throes for the season, so we'll see how this one rolls out. We appreciate you taking time. He's Steve Bartle. He's down there in Waco. Thanks, man. Have fun down there.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, fellas.
There you go. Steve Bartle.